I tell people at the beginning of the class, I ask them what they want to get out of this. They tell me, but I tell them what I want you to get out of this is, number one, that you understand the steps you need to take to start a business. That's probably why they're coming. Number two, that they know where to turn for help. They probably don't even realize they're going to need a lot of help along the way.
Yes, and even once you have a business, you continue to need help.
Yeah.
You know.
And then number three, and to me it's the most important one, I want them to walk away confident that they can do this.
Welcome to the Small Nation Podcast, brought to you by CoverLink Insurance, where people are more important than policies. On this show, we unpack lessons from entrepreneurs, break down development strategies, and do deep dives on small town success. Our goal is to provide value to our listeners by hosting conversations that teach, inform, and inspire.
Okay, guys, welcome. Man, this is great to be back in the studio today. I am super excited to have Rob here. Rob Alexander is the director, right? Title?
Executive director.
That's right.
Don't forget about the executive.
I like that because he does have a lot of responsibilities. We're going to talk about that today. So the executive director for the Springfield SBDC.
Yeah. Small Business Development Center.
Small Business Development Center. And that, I'm glad you clarified that because we are, one of the reasons why I wanted to on the show is we hosted a segment with Director Lydia Mahalik from the Ohio Department of Development. Mm-hmm. And she was kind of going through the laundry list of tools that are available to communities and small business owners. And the SBDC came up. And so asking a few more clarifying questions, what does the SBDC do? She went through this list when it comes to training and coaching and loans and grants and all these things. And I was like, I want to really get to the nitty gritty of all those things and some practical examples that can help business owners that are new and also existing stay strong. And so tell us a little bit more. First off, I'd like to tell us about you, how you ended up in this role, and we'll dive in next talk a little bit more about the SBDC.
Sure. Well, I actually think it's funny that I even ended up in this role because I myself have never run a small business. That has never been my job at all.
Okay.
Although that was the goal. That's what I went to college for. I wanted to get out and start my own baseball training facility.
I like that.
But life happened, and I find myself in nonprofit world, raising money for nonprofits and then running them. But I was always an entrepreneur at heart. So it's funny how life happens. I come full circle. Now I'm running a nonprofit, helping other people start and run small businesses. So it's exciting to start a business.
Yeah.
I get to do that every single day, which is cool.
Wow.
Well, and you mentioned that wasn't what you originally thought you were doing. So tell us about where you grew up, some of the roles that you've had, and then how what you've learned from those roles have prepared you for what you're doing now.
Yeah. Well, I grew up near Lancaster, Ohio.
Okay. Now say the name of your town. You and I were talking about this.
Yeah. Well, the actual town is called Lithopolis.
Lithopolis.
Yeah.
Say that 5 times fast.
No thanks.
If you know your Latin, that's Rock City.
Oh, okay.
Ooh, okay.
And if you drive through Lithopolis, it's not a city that rocks. But
well, is there rocks there? Or how?
Yeah, there's a lot of cliffs and stuff.
Okay.
Ooh, okay.
All right.
Okay. Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So you grew up there.
Grew up there. I was a total jock. My whole life was baseball. Didn't know anything other than it until I got injured.
What position do you play?
I was a catcher.
Okay.
And it was just a unfortunate timing thing, and I didn't have a whole lot of backup plans other than going to this particular college and catching. And when that fell through, Wright State was my only other option. Mm-hmm. So ended up at Wright State in Dayton, Ohio.
Yeah, sure.
Where I met my wife, and then we kind of settled down in this area, and I never did move back to Columbus. And now Clark County, Springfield area is home, and we love it. I got 4 kids, very involved in the community, and busy. We're in a busy season.
Well, and for people that maybe haven't been to Springfield or know about Springfield, there's a lot of there's some celebrity folks that have come from born and raised and are now doing some big things in Springfield. There's great architecture and history. Do you want to share a little bit some of those highlights?
Well, probably the biggest one is Springfield is where John Legend.
Yeah, that's right.
We have the John Legend Theater in the same building where my kids now go to STEM school.
Wow,
that's awesome.
I'm not a Springfielder. I'm kind of now been in my role 7 years, and I'm feeling more and more like a Springfielder. So there's probably a lot more that I don't know about. John
It's
Legend's
the
the
Champion
big one.
City, right?
Such a cool name.
Champion City. I mean, wouldn't
cool.
you want to live and start a business and do something in the Champion City?
Yeah. I have a cool story. So even though I didn't grow up in Springfield, my ancestors were from here, the Alexanders, if you go way back. And if you go back far enough, you find my great-great-great-great-grandfather, who was a farmhand at the farm where they had this exposition of all these mowing, cutting reaper machines. And it was this young man who was at that exposition who got the idea of creating what became the Champion City Reaper that basically made Springfield blow up as a city. So my grandpa was there just doing his job. This other guy's here being an entrepreneur. And I often think about the different paths that their lives took because of that.
That's awesome. And the Dayton area, so Springfield, probably the closest metro is Dayton, Ohio. 100 years ago, it was the center for so much entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
Engineers, like there was a very strong guild of engineers that chose to live and learn and build Dayton, Ohio. And, Bell Fountain, where we're working at now, really benefited from a lot of that. We often have talked about the historic Canby building, which is a building that we're working to save and restore. And Edward Canby, Ethan, you coached us. We're not to say anything. Edward Canby, down in Dayton, Ohio, owned the Dayton Computing Scale Company, and there were he invented basically this money weight scale that ended up getting acquired by the International Tabulating Computing Company, and that became IBM. Like IBM,
Wow.
the origins of Dayton, Ohio, and these beautiful brass scales ended up, being one of the largest, most powerful, computer and technology companies in the world. And that's the neat thing about history of, towns like Springfield. It's getting into that DNA. And, Rob, appreciate you sharing your family story, and some of that probably is in your DNA too, like in a way, you're helping people and businesses today. But tell us about like the SBDC, the Small Business Development Center.
Sure. So our SBDC is not a unique invention. There are SBDCs all around the country. There's about 1,000 of them. Here in Ohio, where we are, there's about 23.
Okay.
So all SBDCs help people start and grow small businesses. They're usually housed within a university. We're not. We're kind of a unicorn because we've been around longer than almost every other SBDCs. We were an SBDC before SBDCs became a real thing.
Wow.
So we don't have a host. We're not in a university. It allows us to be nimble. So we do the same thing all SBDCs do because they have the same grant that we have.
Okay.
But then we also have this other side of what we do, which is a lot more economic development, making loans, being what we call a gap lender.
And when you talk with a new business owner, some of the common questions that come up, financing is probably on that top 3 list or top 5 list.
Yeah.
And what are the kind of questions that you get? And then what are ways and tools that you can help people or refer them to others if you can't help them?
Well, one thing I know is the 2 biggest reasons why so many people have this dream of being their own boss, but then they don't do it. Number 1 is they don't have the financing to do it. We as a nation are not good at saving. We've just been getting worse and worse and worse over the decades.
That's right.
The second reason is they just don't know where to turn for help. They've been doing whatever it is they do, welding, landscaping, their whole life, 10, 20 years, and they're good at that. But when you run a business, you wear a lot of hats.
That's right.
And so they don't know how to wear every one of those other hats, and that's what they come in here looking for help. And probably the main question that starts with is, how do I do this legally? They don't want to get in trouble.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Interesting.
So when you say like, how do you answer that question? If they say, how do you do it legally?
Yeah. Well, it's a lot simpler and cheaper than people assume. So we just walk them through their options and choosing a structure. What's the difference between a sole proprietor and an LLC and a corporation, and how can you get in trouble if you're not an LLC, if someone then sues your company? And there's not that many steps after that. And really, Ohio is a great place to start a business because it's $99 to get your LLC.
Yep.
$99.
Yep.
Maybe $25 if you need a vendor's license, and go get some insurance. I mean, that's the cost. There's maybe 1 or 2 other steps if you don't have employees. It's not hard. And people will pay a lot of money to attorneys or LegalZoom to go do something that we can do for free with them. That we don't charge at SBDC. We've never charged a dime to a business owner.
So they don't come in and have to write you a big check.
No. Some ask if they can pay me.
Yeah.
And I have to tell them I'm not allowed.
Yeah.
That would be nice.
Unfortunately.
Yeah. No, they've been paying for this their whole life. Their tax dollars have been what fills our coffers. The 20 different coaches that I have on my team, they're not volunteers. They get paid, and they're good at what they do. But it's because of tax dollars that we can do this.
So this is not some kind of cheap program, like it's not just, a lesser value program just because it's free to the user. These are, professionals in their work. But you mentioned coaches, so I assume that's one way you do, coaching. But what are the other ways that you engage with those entrepreneurs that come to you?
We really do three things. One-on-one coaching is the thing we want them to do because we can get very specific, very strategic based on their situation and what it is they're trying to create. A lot of people, the front door they choose, though, is to come to one of our group trainings, whether that's a marketing masterclass or mine, which I call BYOB, but it's not the fun BYOB. It's the be your own boss.
Oh, okay.
But that could be fun.
That could be fun, too.
Be your own boss.
I'm like, I understand why everyone's coming to your group parties. Like,
that's the secret right there.
and they're going to walk away with value from those seminars, but my goal is that we light this fire and get them to realize that if you had a coach walking with you through this journey, your chances of succeeding are a lot higher. So we got the coaching, we've got the group classes, and then we got the lending.
Yeah.
In the types of group sessions, are there particular themes? Are they the same kind of training? I mean, how if someone they're just listening that maybe isn't comfortable getting that one-on-one yet, what are some of the group trainings kind of called, and how would they get involved?
Yeah, most SBDCs have certain ones that they do regularly. My BYOB, for example, I do that every single month. We do a back office basics quarterly, a marketing masterclass quarterly, and a sales related one quarterly. And we've just been doing those for the last 2 years because we really wanted to hone those in, make them great. Prior to that, everything was these one-off things. We might do a LinkedIn one or a Facebook advertising one or a small business loan one. And they're all good, but I mean, you spend 10, 20 hours developing curriculum and after an hour and a half or 2 hours, it's done. So we wanted to have the good ones that are in high demand, but then once those are developed, and now they are, we're going to go back to some of those niche ones that we might just do once or twice.
Yeah, that's cool. That makes sense.
And every SBDC does these. I mean, they're all going to have bookkeeping ones and startup 101, marketing classes, stuff like that.
Yeah. Now, after being there in Springfield for a little bit, have you seen any of those stories play out? Like, do you have any success stories that you'd like to share?
Oh, sure. We just put all these canvases on our walls of business owners who either got their start at SBDC or we became part of their journey along the way. It's tough because everything we do is so confidential. So unless they've given me permission, I can't talk about a whole lot of stories.
Yeah.
But they're out there.
Yeah.
It's the wildest stuff. People can start businesses in all kinds of niches. So, I can have someone come in who wants to start a pole dancing fitness business, which is a thing.
It is a thing right now. It's trending in fitness.
And then right after that, someone comes in and wants to crossbreeds pythons to want to make different colors and variations.
Yeah,
sure.
Probably see some crazy stuff.
Yeah, and so somehow we've got to be the experts on all these things, but not really. Every business has the same fundamentals. We still have to market. We still have to make sales. We still have to understand human resources. So I don't need to be the expert on breeding pythons. That guy is.
Well, I'll share a success case that we have had at Small Nation. We work to fill empty spaces. And here in town, about 2 years ago, we acquired a group of 5 storefronts and 7 apartments that the building was in really rough shape. And in fact, when we bought it, we had a problem with bugs. The worst, according to our pest control inspector, this building had the worst roach infestation that he had ever seen.
Yikes.
And he came back to us and said, he was actually smiling about it and happy about it. And I'm like, why?
It's a fun day at work.
He said, this is the worst. I've been doing this for 20 or so years. And this is the worst roach infestation I've ever seen. And he said, you have a really unique kind of roach. I'm like, well, tell me more about that. He's like, well, you're the roach that is in your buildings, and there's lots of them, is of the German varietal. And I'm like, well, why? What does that mean? He's like, well, they don't need a food source because they eat each other.
Cannibal roaches.
Yep,
Yeah.
exactly.
So, but my point is the building was really bad. You know, we luckily, you know, the roaches found a different home and moved on.
Probably here down in the basement.
Yeah, unfortunately, the guy did warn me they will move when I treat them. But like, we wanted to see, we had this vision to remodel the building, to make it a unique destination experience in our town. And when I would talk to people about what other towns they love to travel to, Yellow Spring is always one of those towns on the top of the list. And I'm always like, well, what's magical about Yellow Springs? Well, it's the culture, it's the people, it's the diversity, and it's like they're like fun and funky. And I wanted that for our town. And this building, working with architects, we designed it and built a place called Rainbow Row Bell Fountain. And it's paying homage to Rainbow Row that's in Charleston, South Carolina. And if you've never been, like, it's this very bright and colorful display of row buildings. And, you know, it's one thing to create the rendering, but then you have to find the businesses that occupy it. And we had someone reach out once we posted a rendering and a for lease sign, and Tanisha McCreary, and I'll give her a shout out. She came to us really specific and said, I want to open up a candy shop. Mm-hmm. And, you know, when you're getting ready to enter a new business, you've never done this before. Yeah. There's a big lease to potentially sign, and then it's all the things that you don't know but you need to know. And one of the first questions that we always ask someone new is like, have you been in business before? A lot of times you hear the word no, and then secondly, have you kind of put together a plan, a business plan? And she's like, I won't even know where to start. Yeah. And that's where the Small Business Development Center, you know, Springfield, we're so lucky to have them in a short drive from Bell Fountain, and the work that Rob and his team is doing. We referred Tanisha there, and Tanisha went through one of Rob's programs, and it was really surprisingly quick. Like I think it was a period over about 3 to 6 months that she, you know, attended a number of trainings and went through some modules, and you can maybe share more. But like, she came back with confidence, with a capital that she was going to commit. She's going to leave her full-time job to start a business and use her hard-earned capital and her retirement savings to fund that. And what was so neat today of hosting Rob and his team in town, Tanisha at Candy Craze has been open up 3 months, and it is now one of the most beloved businesses, not only in Rainbow Row, but the whole town. And just to see that, and to see her be able to hire her first employees, to see her expand her hours, and then it had to be pretty cool for you, like walking in the shop today.
It is. What she did is very visible because it's a retail store. It makes me wonder how many people were just sitting in a seminar of ours that are now living their best life, as they say. Yeah. And I don't even know about it. Yeah. She came to my BYOB seminar, and then after that, she went to Back Office Basics to learn all the back office stuff. And I tell people at the beginning of the class, I ask them what they want to get out of this. They tell me, but I tell them what I want you to get out of this is, number one, that you understand the steps you need to take to start a business. That's probably why they're coming. Number two, that they know where to turn for help. They probably don't even realize they're going to need a lot of help along the way.
Yes, and even once you have a business, you continue to need help. Yeah. You know.
And then number three, and to me it's the most important one, I want them to walk away confident that they can do this, motivated. So it's as much of a motivational seminar in my mind than it is an educational seminar.
And again, for listeners, this is free.
Yeah. And so I think obviously, you know, this is beneficial for entrepreneurs to hear. If you're thinking about getting started, starting a business, you don't know how, find your local SBDC, you know, near you and plug into those resources. But also the conversation doesn't stop there. And, you know, at Small Nation, I'd like to think that we take pride in helping entrepreneurs, you know, not only just fill our spaces, but helping them succeed, right? And so for developers listening, and economic development professionals, you know, you don't just want to fill spaces with businesses that are going to close up shop. You have to fill them with businesses that are sustainable. And so, you know, plugging them into resources like this, I think it's a game changer.
one of the things I said in marketing masterclass, and I think a lot of businesses know that it is a lot more expensive to acquire a brand new customer than it is to keep the ones you have. So why don't we invest more resources in keeping our customers? Well, isn't that true for a city or a village with their businesses?
Yeah.
It is hard to attract brand new businesses to your town, and it makes no sense if you're then not going to support them, because if you can keep the ones you have and then add some sporadically, you're just going to keep growing. Otherwise, you've got a hole in the dam and you're just pouring more and more water into it, and it's just leaking out.
And, I think that speaks to, Springfield as a city, is to be able to support you in that way of making sure they're taking care of their entrepreneurs and people who want to start businesses there. But, on our call, you mentioned that Springfield is a legacy manufacturing city.
Yeah.
And we know, a lot of small towns in Ohio had their heyday at one point. We talked about it earlier, famous people come from here. There's a lot of manufacturing and industry. And then at some point throughout history that has left, and the status quo and the attitude has just been kind of mellow since then. So what are you, how are you thinking about changing that, that story and getting people excited again?
I think for a city like Springfield or any legacy manufacturing city, that is not an easy thing to change.
Yeah.
Because you've got people who have been raised by people who have been raised by people who have been raised by people who have always clocked in and out and had a boss and just showed up for a job. So the concept of being your own boss is a little foreign in a town that was built on factories where one employer employed so many people. At one time, Springfield had like the second largest factory in the entire world. There was only one bigger in the country of Prussia or something like that.
Wow.
And so I think when manufacturing moved away, and it did, Springfield lost a ton of population, a ton of businesses. We were left looking for our identity. Bringing a big employer in, it's good. It brings tons of jobs in at one time. But the problem is when you lose one big employer, you're also losing a lot of jobs at one time. So I think what we need to do is figure out what is Springfield's identity. Does it need an identity? I've always felt like Springfield has this maker kind of feel that we ought to lean into. How do we support people who want to make things?
Well, you look at the popularity of Etsy and people wanting to buy things that have a real legitimate story.
Yeah.
And it is right. There are people that are in the gig economy. They're very talented makers designing art or furniture. And it is kind of, how do we get into their homes to know that there's a path that they can grow and scale? How do you kind of think about that with the resources that you provide?
When I first started, I know I was showing up in a shirt and tie, and I quickly realized that is not Springfield. It's a very blue collar town.
You may be, they probably don't trust you if you come in with a shirt and tie.
No, they definitely don't.
Right. Because you're not authentic.
I make sure that when they're sitting across the desk, they know that we know what we're talking about, but they also don't think that we're looking down on them. So part of this is understanding the culture you serve and becoming one of them. And that applies not only to blue collar, white collar, but more recently, we're learning a lot more about how to be culturally sensitive and aware, and to make sure that our team, they see people on our team who also look like them.
Yep. Which is a big issue.
It creates trust.
Well, we work in a lot of small towns, and we're trying to help those towns be able to provide big city amenities. And one of the conversations really has to be is like, how are we focusing to be more diverse, and how are we focusing to be inclusive in conversations of people that may be different from you?
Yeah, it's very easy to say that we'll serve anyone who comes to us. And I've been guilty of saying that all along. We don't turn anyone away, nor do we treat anyone different. However, like when I went and looked at our data, there was huge disparities between how much capital we were getting into the hands of our minority clients, how many jobs those clients were creating. And that part made me sick. And it made me realize, something is probably broken. We've got to change our approach. And that meant changing our team. It meant also changing how we work with people. we needed to go where they were. They're not comfortable coming to big institutions. They don't trust them.
Yeah.
But they have the same dreams that anyone else does, and maybe even more so because it's not as easy for them to go out and get the job of their dreams.
Yeah.
Well, I want to compliment Rob and a number of organizations and people that are working with businesses and economic development in Springfield. A few years ago, there was a news story that came out about Springfield that was not positive. The major grocery store chain in the area closed. And when that happens to a community, especially a large one, then you become a food desert. And what inspired me about, instead of the community just accepting that, the business closed, but we're going to do something about it, they organized a business pitch competition called Springfield Hustles. And I got introduced to that group, and number one, they were creating great promo videos of highlighting like, hey, like come enter your business in this competition. We have all this free money and resources. And I think at one point it was almost like 6 figures worth of prizes that were being offered.
Jeez.
And sitting and listening, they were very intentional about like, hey, we've got this food desert. We want to encourage people that have good ideas around serving food and providing food to the community. Please come. And they did. And like I, drank fresh squeezed juice that was made by a food truck. And, I heard these really creative ideas for home food delivery services and things that like it was seeing that how entrepreneurship was stepping up to solve a gap that a really large corporation just didn't see the potential there. But I think the community's rallied around and that a lot of those things have been healed because the right leaders, investors, people said, we're going to take this community back.
Yeah. We're on the right track. There's been disparities for so long that there's no way we can expect something to change in a few years. But I think that people appreciate good faith efforts. And if we keep doing the right things, trust will be regained. We will start to level the field, as we like to say. And it needs to happen. It's not okay in a country this prosperous that we're leaving entire groups of people behind.
Yeah.
Fair.
Wow. That's awesome. And tell me a little bit about, your guys' branch. Is that the right way to say it? SBDC?
Sure.
Branch of the SBDC, getting creative with partnering with other local nonprofits to build that trust with community members. Can you talk about some of the things that you're doing there?
Yeah. So part of this is based on us applying for this $1 million grant that only 51 organizations around the country got. We took the approach that because we felt like we don't have the trust, they can't look across the desk and see someone like us, these minority groups we're trying to reach. Instead of us trying to lead from out front, let's actually partner with 8 different nonprofits who do have those relationships, who do have those trusts.
Yeah.
Let's empower them to hire someone who is kind of a half coach, half caseworker who's pointing them to all the resources that are out there to help them. And they will go to those meetings with them as an advocate. That made all the difference in the world. It was the secret sauce that was missing, was that representation, the trust factor.
Mm-hmm.
So it's worked out great, honestly.
Yeah, and that's great. I just think there's all kinds of good ideas that can come from that. I'm an ideas guy, so immediately as soon as I heard that, I was like, oh, that's great for nonprofits to be able to plug into a resource like the SBDC and provide that for their clients. It's a good way for people to trust the government. If they have a hard time trusting the government, suddenly you become their neighbor rather than this big scary figure, I guess.
It shouldn't have surprised me, but people came from out of the woodwork. I just assumed there weren't very many Hispanic people wanting to start businesses,
right.
or we have a lot of Haitians in Springfield, but we've only seen 1 or 2 come into our office prior to this. Well, have a seminar and do it in Haitian Creole and see how many there are. Do one in Spanish and see how many there are. Those were the most popular seminars we've done in the last couple of years because there's never been anything for them. And like I said, it's not like they don't have dreams. Immigrants start businesses at almost twice the rate of someone born in the United States.
Wow.
Yeah.
So maybe we ought to invest in people like that who actually are willing to take a risk.
Yeah. That's quite the perspective.
Which can be controversial.
Sure.
We wanted to be someone who kind of stirred the pot and said, this isn't working. You're part of the problem. Guess what? We were too, but we were honest enough to admit it.
Yeah.
One of the our brightest success stories is getting a chance to work with Laura and Humberto that have opened up the Flying Pepper in our town. And they have a kind of Springfield DNA connection. Is Humberto immigrated from Mexico about 15 years ago and started working in culinary at Clark State University and saved up all of his money and bought a food truck. And when Mother Stewart's Brewery opened up, he was like the big food truck there, and went down, ate his food, met his wife, Laura, and they as a team, not only just really passionate about serving authentic Mexican cuisine, but also hiring and retaining and building up the people that work in their restaurant. And that's probably the biggest compliment is people from the outside that come to the Flying Pepper, which now they've moved from food truck to full sit-down dining, beautiful patio, beautiful bar, catering, and they're anchored in our co-working facility, which is Build Co-working Space. But they are like that example that are just lit on fire with entrepreneurship, have the hustle, the drive, the passion, and now bringing their culture and their food and making so many people happy.
Yeah, all true. And the other thing that they bring is jobs for those groups that need them the most. If we help someone who just got out of prison to start a business, they're going to be a lot more inclined to hire someone with criminal records. If you've got a criminal record, it's very hard to find a job. Same thing if you help a Black-owned business and they can become a job creator, now you're helping a community that needs those jobs as well. So yes, you bring culture, you bring more variety, but now you're also bringing wealth to communities that need it.
Yeah.
Love that.
That's awesome. And I think it's an important conversation to have, so I'm glad that you guys are having it and bringing it here to Bell Fountain as well. All right. At this time, we're going to take a quick break to hear a word from our sponsors. Come check out 600 Downtown Pizzeria in downtown Bell Fountain, where they cherish the art of making the most authentic, unique, and delicious, world-famous and award-winning pizzas. Their team hand-spins each pizza the old-fashioned way and only uses the freshest of ingredients. Come see why they were featured on the Food Network. If you are looking for a dynamic workspace in the heart of Bell Fountain, look no further. Build Co-working Space is your destination for creativity and collaboration. With state-of-the-art facilities and a thriving community, this is where innovation happens. Join them today for as low as $99 a month and build your success at Build Co-working Space. I want to kind of dive into another new show segment here called Tour Takeaways. A little dramatic build here. Before the show today, you took a tour of downtown Bell Fountain. What were a few takeaways from what you saw and experienced here today?
It took me a while to catch on to this, but I felt like things were placed intentionally. Like there was almost these little districts. You had the salon district where they're all like bunched up, and it starts to make sense. You have this district where there's several businesses that target children. And I thought, you know what? That's smart. Now there's a reason to go down there because there's not just one place to visit, there's multiple. And I think that the typical city or whoever does development simply creates spaces that someone can move into, and whoever can pay the rent, we'll put them in there.
Right.
And that doesn't always help that business owner because it was not, location's everything, right? Location. Well, what if we were smart about creating spaces that would attract a certain kind of business and then having some synergy? That part I love.
Yeah.
And I couldn't tell you how intentional that was. It has to be somewhat intentional.
Sure.
Great observation.
I was going to say, I'll let you speak to that.
Well, I'll be honest with you. It was hard to do that in the beginning because, businesses are very protective. Their business, and I'm sure you see this, is like their child. Mm-hmm. So if you have one coffee shop and the thought of another coffee shop coming to town, or if there's one hair salon and another one's opening up, one of the first immediate reactions with some people is that competition is going to put me out of business. They're going to steal my customers. Well, we've actually found, and this has replayed itself over and over, that when your town has multiple versions that's providing services in that industry, you can still be your differentiator, how your brand is differentiated, your product, but you then become known as a destination for coffee, for desserts, for boutiques or shopping. And I'll use Springfield as an example with antiques. So one of the largest, I think it might be the largest antique mall in the state is, right there in Springfield, Ohio. And there's another one right across the street. And I'm sure maybe in the beginning, those owners, I don't know this, but this is just the natural reaction. It's like, well, oh my gosh, that competitor is opening up across the street.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you, I think probably Springfield gets double the traffic for antiques because now they're planting the flag in the state to say we are a destination for this.
Yep.
And it is intentional, and we're trying to get better. In the early days of redeveloping a town that had 80% vacancy on the first floor, it was hard to some cases turn down that office tenant that wanted to go next to the busy restaurant because it was just high visibility. But when you get retail clustered in the right places, pizza and ice cream, Wits and 600, with those two things being together, they benefit from the traffic from each other, and they in themselves become a destination there. So I think if we can work with our towns and communities in planning, looking at where we want the parks, looking at where we want to put the right infrastructure, and then zoning is another tool, and then working with developers that have a vested interest to see the long-term success of a building, of a property, of a district, of a neighborhood. And that's kind of what we advocate for, but I appreciate your observation, because I think that we're in about year 15 of this. So this has not been an overnight thing. It's been an iteration of learning through that.
Yeah. One thing you said reminds me of what I think business owners have a really hard time understanding, is that they can't be all things to all people. You've got to figure out what makes you different or better, and it doesn't have to be a bunch of things. It needs to be probably one thing. So you could have multiple coffee shops right in the same area, but you got to figure out what makes your coffee shop different from those others, and that's all it takes. I like pizza, and I'll get pizza from probably 8 different places, each one for a different reason based on that situation that day. And they all sell pizza to someone who likes pizza.
Yep.
Well, and my favorite story, and one of the first podcast episodes we recorded was with Brittany Saxton of 600 downtown. So
just ate there for the first time.
What'd you think?
Oh my gosh, so good.
Yeah,
you put pickles on pizza, you win my heart.
Big deal. Right?
Yeah, it is the big deal, and it's
actually the very big deal.
Well, the thing about Brittany and her story, she was really the first project that was the catalyst that really got momentum and people thinking differently about downtown Bellefontaine. But we already had 13 other pizza places in Bellefontaine. So you can imagine that when she said, we're opening up a pizza place downtown Bellefontaine. First off, the negatives of why downtown? There's no parking. It's vacant. It's empty. And then secondly, wow, that's a novel idea. There's 13 other pizza places in town. Yeah. And I'm so proud of her. And I think we need to highlight more success examples of like her, that you tune out the things that don't matter. And you're going to get criticism. You're going to get negativity anytime you step out and do something that's different. How do you coach and help entrepreneurs when they're like, I feel so lonely?
I warn them that they're going to. I warn them that when you share your dream with people, you're going to get one of two responses, and neither one is good usually. One, they're going to tell you exactly what they think you want to hear, which is great. It builds your ego, but sometimes that can make you make the wrong decision.
Great point.
The other one is they rip on it. And I think it's because so many people wish that they had the guts to take that risk, and they just never have. And so they live with regret, and they don't want to see other people taking risks.
Right.
Neither one of those is good. I think if you got that dream, you ought to share it with someone, but make sure you share it with someone who understands what it's like to dream and to go after those dreams. And you can find that at an SBDC. You're probably going to find that among other business owners. You just have to find your tribe of entrepreneurs, because they're the only ones that are going to understand the journey you're about to take. And it's not an easy journey. It is lonely.
That's awesome.
It's a great point. And you mentioned, the early days of helping someone that's new and kind of getting started getting the legal structure, right? Mm-hmm. We talked a little bit about access to capital, and I just want to put a button on that, because particularly at the SBDC, you have some unique resources that are different from traditional banks. Mm-hmm. Can you maybe highlight some of those funding partners and ways that people can get access to capital working with the SBDC?
Yeah, I think what might be useful to listeners is that there probably are some programs out there that were designed to get capital into the hands of people who aren't going to get it through traditional means. The way we go about it in Springfield is if you go to a bank and let's say you need $100,000, well, if the bank likes your idea, they're not going to give you $100,000. They're going to give you $80,000, and you got to come up with $20,000. Well, maybe you don't have $20,000, or maybe you go to the bank and you've got a 650 credit score, and the bank's like, well, it's too low. It has to be a 700. Well, does your dream die at that point? We get involved then because we don't want to see that venture not happen. That doesn't mean we're going to make a loan to someone with a 400 credit score. But in that case, a bank is only doing 60% of the deal. We're now doing 30% of the deal, and the owner only has to come up with 10%, not 20. And it's a low rate, low fixed rate. So we want them to succeed. We don't want to burden them with a lot of debt. So we're not like a bank in that our motive isn't profit. Our motive is prosperity in Springfield. So we're willing to take on more risk. And I would imagine probably a lot of other cities either have this or they could have programs that are gap lenders. You need gap lending. Otherwise, you're only getting people who are already wealthy starting businesses.
And let's just say if I'm, working on a business plan, and that's probably another thing that I just want to, also emphasize that you guys do. You help people plan and develop and improve their business plans.
Oh, yeah. I think it's one of those bread and butter things we do. We could probably have a conversation about the value of business plans. What are they good for and what maybe they aren't? But yes, we definitely do help.
So there's that piece of it. And then getting access to capital. Can you speak just specifically? Because that's usually one of the top questions I get is, if I'm an existing business or a new business, right now, cost of capital, we're 20-year high for a lot of folks. And so the concern with that is that's going to slow down entrepreneurship. What are some tools that you have if someone's listening and like, I'm looking to start a business or I'm looking to grow my business, it's been existing and I'm looking to get more capital?
The answer may not be one people want to hear a lot of times, if I'm being really honest. So many people come in asking about, well, how do I get grants that help women or veterans or minorities start businesses? And we always have to tell them, like, you're probably not. That's
a misnomer. A lot of people think like there's just this free, sorry, I'm bunting this down. There's this free stuff. Yeah. It's not really free.
Well, it's like lottery. Somebody does win the lottery, but 99.9% of the people who play it don't. So yeah, you could get a grant, but you probably won't. And for a lot of people, if they haven't saved money, it's going to be hard to get a loan as well. It's going to be hard to get investors if you're not a kind of a business that's going to scale really quickly. So where does that leave you? In most cases, honestly, we're talking to people about how to start a business on a small scale and grow it organically, do it the safe way rather than trying to be big right from the get-go. It doesn't work for every kind of business, and that's just the tough reality. But what I've learned is that almost by far, how businesses are funded are just your own personal savings and credit cards. Right after that is family, friends, and if you want to throw in fools, you can. Banks are way lower on that list, way lower. Yeah. It shocks people how low they are.
And it's harder. It's harder to get a bank loan.
They're not in the business of taking risks, and banks understand that half of all businesses fail in the first 5 years. So why would you want to make a 10-year loan or a 5-year loan when it's a 50-50 chance they were not even going to be there?
Yeah, and that's something we've talked about on the podcast before with Richwood Bank. We had him in here just talking about just the reality of lending from a bank's perspective. They're going to look to see that you're successful somewhere else before they're safe. So that's where you have to learn about those other sources of capital.
Yeah, I mean, it's the great part of what we're doing, because we had a client come in whose credit score, it was in the 400s, but we knew that he knew the business inside out. He's grown up in that business. And we worked with him. We got his credit score up into the almost 600, and then we took a huge risk because we believed in him.
Yeah.
And he went, so that allowed him to purchase a food truck. I'm talking about Cheetos Tacos. I can actually talk about him. I got permission. Cheetos Tacos food truck took off. so fast that within a year, he's now in a bricks and mortar location in our co-working space in downtown Springfield. And he is living his dream now. And it all happened in 1 year because he spent a lot of time with SBDC coaches and because we took a chance on him when banks would have never touched it.
Yeah. I love that. Awesome. And we've got to replicate more of those examples.
Yeah.
Yeah. More than half of everyone has thought about owning a business.
Wow.
Why, for 40 years, have we seen entrepreneurship actually declining? It's gone up since COVID, but for 40 years it declined when so many people want to do it. What's the disconnect?
Yeah, interesting thought. If someone wanted to take advantage of the SBDC in their area, how might one go about doing so? Where can I find you?
Search engine optimization is usually pretty good for SBDCs. If you type Springfield in business, we're the number one result. Probably if you say SBDC near me, you're going to find a location that's probably within driving distance, no matter where you're at in the country. That's probably the easiest way. There's a national association, America's SBDC. There's directories of all SBDCs on that kind of a website as well.
Cool. Yeah, thanks. And that's what, I would encourage entrepreneurs who, are resonating with these first steps and that's me. I need some help in this area, go and actually take advantage of some of those, get a group training, get some one-on-one coaching. That's an amazing resource, it's available.
And I would say it is not just for startups either, which is a misconception, I think, everywhere. It actually works best for existing business owners. They're the ones who create the most jobs, access capital. That's where economic development primarily happens. And I think that a lot of business owners feel that if I need to go to an SBDC, if I need to have a business coach, that makes me a weak business owner. I think just the opposite. I mean, Tiger Woods still had a golf coach, but he was the best golfer in the world. Mm-hmm. You need someone who helps make sure you're working on your game, on your business.
Well, and that we've talked about that before with a number of entrepreneurs that you get stuck in the trenches working in your business, and it's hard until you have a coach or you dedicate time within your calendar to work on your business. Yeah. But probably the best investment is when you're getting new knowledge and meeting new people and even just having others that are filling up your fuel tank, because this is not easy. This is really, really hard. Yeah. That the SBDC and the kind of people that are connected, they're like what you said earlier, Rob, like find your tribe. Mm-hmm. It's find other people that will listen, that will build you up when you are struggling, and they'll also give you honest, direct advice when you need it.
Yeah. I have people who will call me to celebrate successes with them because it's not something they want to blast out on social media. It's not something they want to necessarily tell their employees about. Or they call me when it's really tough too. Again, who do you talk to about that stuff? I'm sometimes that person for them. It may be other business owners they've met at a seminar, but you do need that person.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, thanks so much for just sharing and highlighting the SBDC. There's a lot of great content in there for, like I said, not only entrepreneurs, but also developers and just economic development professionals anyway. But what is one professional development resource that has been impactful to you?
I watch a lot of YouTube videos.
All right.
I've learned how to use YouTube.
Yep.
It was different from how my kids used it. So I subscribe to certain channels. There's a particular podcast that I listen to a ton. It's Amy Porterfield's, I want to say Marketing Made Easy. Maybe that's what it was called. Amy Porterfield, though, she taught me how to do email marketing. She taught me about marketing funnels. And then by listening to that podcast, I heard all these other experts, and so I could tune into them. I had an hour-long commute, so I feel like I got a master's degree in email marketing.
I love that.
Before I started this job at SBDC. And so if you have not discovered podcast as a way of growing as an entrepreneur, find one in an area where you're not strong and just listen to that for a year.
Yeah.
You'll become an expert.
My dad calls it redeeming his time in the car.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah.
I miss my hour-long commute, honestly. Sometimes I'm not consuming as much content because I have now a 12-minute commute.
Yeah. I was driving out here to Bell Fountain every day. I was doing the same exact thing, just furthering my education. So thanks for sharing that. And then where can people find you, follow you, keep up what's happening with the Springfield SBDC?
Yep. Again, search engine optimization is good. Springfield Business, you'll find us, but SpringfieldSBDC.com is our website. We have a great website, and it can get you connected. If you happen to be in our area and want to work with us, there's an easy way to just fill out a short form and request a meeting. It never hurts to just have a meeting. Why not try and get free resources at your local SBDC before you go pay someone else to help you?
Yeah, that's awesome.
And if you head down, if you've not been to Springfield recently, you've got to get down and check out lots of new things. Of course, Cohatch in the marketplace has been a great addition in the community. There are, I think, 2 Winans, Chocolates and Coffee in Springfield. So Winans, we've had Wilson on the podcast before, and 5th generation family business that continues to do some great things in the region. But it's on the move, and it is one of those things. People like Rob and a lot of artists and entrepreneurs and people, and I always love that term with Springfield hustles, people that are hustling and doing good stuff. So thank you again for today. Was a day of sharing lots of resources. There's a lot of clips that I hope we can break down into some nuggets that a lot of people ask, that Rob just provided some great advice and tools of how to get plugged in and how to, really be resourced correctly. So thank you for that today, Rob.
This was fun. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks, Rob. Thanks for tuning in on this episode of the Small Nation Podcast. We hope that conversation proved valuable to you. And if you enjoyed it, be sure to share the episode and follow the show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or your favorite podcasting platform. You can also subscribe to the Small Nation YouTube channel if you prefer to watch your episodes. Follow Small Nation on social media, and we'll see you in the next episode.